The importance of representation in media has been a prominent topic for many years now. Whether it's racial representation or LGBTQ one, it's a matter that usually takes delicate handling and can easily be done wrong. Arcane, widely praised for everything from its emotional engaging storyline to its musical score, visual side of it, and complexity of it all, got it right yet again. It mastered representation like not many pieces of media did until now, showing a blossoming relationship between two women in a respectful manner that received nothing but acclaim, also from within the LGBT community itself. The lack of proper representation has been an issue in platforms like Disney or Marvel, and a noticeable problem. Main reason being financial one. Often major part of their market lies in China, where homosexual relationships would have been censored. However, there is no doubt it is important for marginalized communities to be able to be portrayed in media, and some other producers did decide not to shy away from the topic. Platforms like Netflix have been famously going as far as introducing such relationships within storylines that did not handle their image in a believable way and often made no sense. But still, such efforts are admirable. If you're a gay person and you feel like you're alone, that you don't fit in, seeing someone like yourself in a piece of media does make you feel better and less alone. A prime example being the show called The L Word that premiered in 2004 and portrayed the life of lesbians as well as queer as folk from the year 2000, mainly focusing on gay men that both helped minorities in a major way. Before VOD platforms like Netflix were widely owned by basically majority of worldwide viewers. Problem is that relationships presented by platforms such as Netflix were not always shown in an authentic, conceivable way. Sometimes it was kind of hard watching it thinking, yes, this is exactly what that is, I see myself in this. Because it's not just about representation itself, but it's also how it's handled, very much so. Often representation focused too much on pleasing the audience, prime example being sexualizing relationships between women. At the same time, it's easy to go too far the other way around and not sexual such relationships at all, risking being criticized for not making these relations credible and not making bold decisions. Representation helps people feel more accepted by the society. It gives voice and helps other people to understand that minorities do exist right next to them and lead just as normal lives. Arcane writers proved themselves to be considerate, and without a doubt they gave much thought into creating their world by asking questions. Would a universe like that pay attention to one's sexual preference? One of the writers discussed that on Reddit. For us, the beauty of it is that that's a fantasy world. It is much more diverse than our world, in so many ways, and it never made sense to us that there would be any stigmatization against who you love in a place like that. We spent a lot of time imagining what that world, free from stigmatization, would look like and how we would express it. For example, would there even be a word for gay? When Vi asks Caitlin whom she prefers, her attitude there was our way of alluding to that lack of stigmatization. It's a completely normal thing to ask and not make assumptions about people's preferences based on some perceived norm. This is also the reason no one commented on Vi's body type. If there is no perceived norm for masculine or feminine expression, how would you even think to make some comparative or contrasting statement? Thanks to that approach precisely, Vi and Caitlin's relationship has been handled in a very delicate, subtle and respectful way. So far it has been one based on words, not based on physical touch, but instead on actions, nuance, stolen glances and intimate gestures, as opposed to Jay and Mel's relationship, which has been constructed in a very different, more literal way, mostly basing it on more obvious mutual attraction and Jace's clear admiration for Mel, which has been probably building up for years prior what we saw. One could sort of question at this point presenting a straight relationship in a very visual way and a same-sex one avoiding it. But at the same time, story-wise, it was very much justified. For example, in The Last of Us Part 2 game, Owen and Abby's scene was shown with probably more details than necessary, while Ellie and Dina's physical encounter was cut for no good reason at all. That is not what Arcane is aiming here for. Also visually, neither Caitlin nor Vi's body has been sexualized for the sake of satisfying some part of the viewers, contrary to their quite visual video games equivalents. They have been both created in an authentic, realistic way, which does not idealize them but makes their body types unique to their personalities. Vi is a fighter. Her body is created as such of a boxer, strong around the legs and arms. Caitlyn, on the other hand, has a silhouette of a person who does not handle her business physically, but rather with a gun. She does not need to be strong physically, but she does need to be fast and sneaky. As an enforcer, she surely had to pass some training that included running or aiming. They also represent what they stand for visually together, purposefully contradicting one another. Vi giving more of a dynamic, courageous and even rebellious approach that the Undercity taught her, her main color being red, while Caitlyn representing calm, pragmatic ways, her main color blue, which stands for justice, peace, a Piltover's colors. Together they complement one another, and that alone is a hint towards their slowly burning bond. That is in fact what Arcane decided to go with. Slow burn is a popular trope in both fanfic and canons where the characters of the main pairing start off not in a relationship and focuses on the slow development of a romantic pairing. There has to be a significant amount of development both for the individuals and for a pair, with romantic tension that builds and builds. And it can go one of two ways. The duo have an immediate attraction, but bury these feelings throughout the plot until they finally boil over, or they don't consciously realize their attraction to each other at all. In a slow burn romance, two people meet, they talk, they learn more about each other, they begin to share their thoughts, their feelings, their lives, and they find love through that effort. They write their own romantic story, it doesn't just happen to them. Arcane allowed for Caitlyn and Vi to recognize their mutual attraction immediately, and it allowed for them to explore it in a maybe not as obvious way, mostly because of homosexual nature of this attraction. Gay relationships aren't always as straightforward, simple as straight ones. The world Caitlyn and Vi live in might be tolerant and open-minded because of how many different races and species share it, forcing everyone to be a little bit more indifferent and neutral to otherness or dissimilarity. Yet it does not change the fact by default people tend to assume heterosexuality. That is primarily why a first step in any same-sex relationship is not exactly finding out if the person likes you, if the person is attracted to you. You first need to find out if the person is actually interested in having a same-sex relationship.
You're hot, Cupcake. So what'll it be, man or woman?
By that statement, she indirectly asked not one, but two questions. Are you into women? And possibly would you be interested in me? Since she did signalize that she finds Caitlyn well hot. While Arcane decided to go for an overall subtle approach, we found out from the writer that the Cupcake line was a valued one, because it did include ultimate acknowledgement of the fact it does exist. It is happening. Otherwise, their attraction could be easily seen by some as entirely unspoken and hence missed by many. Not without the reason there's a "they were good friends" joke operating within the gay relationships presentation. It really does happen. People do get confused when it's not to their face. It often leads to differences of opinions within the fandom. So Arcane was one step ahead and decided to tell us. It is happening, it is real, which is also something that Violet acknowledged while hugging Caitlyn goodbye.
It's been real, Cupcake.
Another fun fact, the line "you're hot, Cupcake" was almost cut from the episode several times and I fought to keep it every time. The agony and joy of writing is walking that fine line between mystery and clarity. And there are always different opinions about how to achieve that. There were those who thought Vi should be more guarded and mysterious with her feelings, as she normally is. And they are not wrong, that is certainly her character. But women who are attracted to women have experienced all too frequently what it's like to have our feelings buried in a subtext for all eternity. And in this instant, it was important to bring more clarity to Vi's character. That is such a smart approach, such a respectful approach towards that part of the audience, you know? And we didn't actually need to see an actual case or anything like that. While sometimes some developers avoid having that visual, physical aspect there, not to upset certain part of the audience. In this scenario, it actually makes so much sense, and it wasn't done neither to upset nor please anyone. It was simply done because it made sense. Of course, it was a bit frustrating as a viewer not to have it done in season 1, now we have to wait. But it was also very much logical considering their dynamic circumstances. And we also know it's pretty much just a matter of time anyway. It was also done so well the way Caitlyn responded to Vi's question without actually having to say anything, because Vi left her with that man and she felt pretty uncomfortable. Then moments later we could see her sitting all relaxed with a woman, and that was pretty much an answer to Vi's question. Later on she also found a way to reply to her without using any words that she is actually potentially interested in her. And that's the way it goes within gay relationships often. Some writers often decide to create more visual than necessary same-sex encounters to please certain parts of the audience, which is also something that Arcane so far avoided. Even the one single scene where Caitlyn was actually naked was handled with care and respect. It wasn't about her body, but about the state that she was in after what could only be described a breakup. But how did they break up if they weren't even together, right? That is the magic of Arcane, how well developed this relationship has been. There was no need to name things up until the moment they actually had to separate when Caitlyn asked,
What about us? Oil and water. Was it meant to be?
ultimately owning the bond and not leaving us surprised. Not feeling like that relation was in any way forced or uncalled for or created to please. Each scene they shared was handled carefully and with respect, focusing shots on details, blurring edges, the way they look at one another, minor frowns, gestures of love, actions they perform. It also was not constructed as a fan service, because writers imagined them in their own way and own it with lots of care. You can see that, making sure it's not also justified by the storyline, but also relatable. That way they actually mastered representation. Thank you so much for watching. Check out my other Arcane video essays and stay safe, guys. This was Ola from Stop Me O channel. Bye.